So UFC 266 just wrapped up. Alexander Volkanovski defends his featherweight title for the second time against Brian Ortega. And let's just start with the main event right there. Alexander Volkanovski with the big win, showing tough resiliency. I mean, man, there was a couple moments in that fight where I thought for sure Brian Ortega was going to take the featherweight belt. I mean, in the third round, obviously Ortega drops Volkanovski with the big left hand. I mean, it was more of like a left straight. It wasn't a big looping shot, but man, he dropped him clean. And right as Volkanovski fell, I mean, right as he hit the mat, Ortega jumped straight to that mounted guillotine, and that thing looked so tight. I mean, I could not believe Alexander Volkanovski snuck out of that somehow. When that guillotine hit, I thought for sure Ortega was going to win the belt right there. I thought for sure. I thought Volkanovski probably wouldn't tap, so I thought he was going to sleep. It looked for a moment there like he was asleep. I mean, his body wasn't moving much, and all of a sudden, right when you think the fight's done, boom, Volkanovski slips out and he stays on top. And you're thinking, man, you almost just got submitted. You might want to take the fight back to the feet. But no, he lands some good ground and pound for a minute. And then, boom, he gets locked in a triangle. And this triangle was tight, too. I mean, Brian Ortega got a full figure four, scooped the leg. I mean, this was a tight triangle. Volkanovski's arm that was in the triangle wasn't fully across Ortega's center line, which could have made the triangle a bit tighter, but still, I mean, that thing was very, very, very tight, and Volkanovski was able to sneak out of that one too. So, I mean, honestly, after that moment, I think Ortega's chances of winning the fight decreased a lot in most people's minds, just because, if he wasn't able to win the fight there with his best weapons at that moment, then how would he be able to win it? It wasn't like he was winning the decision. He would have had to get a finish, and he could have knocked him out. He does carry big power, and with those little 4-ounce gloves, we know anybody can get knocked out. But Ortega being a Rener Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and obviously that being his most highly developed skill set, when Volkanovski snuck out of that guillotine, especially with how tight it was, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And same thing with the triangle. So when Volkanovski got out of those submissions, I was thinking, man, that's tough luck for Ortega. If he wasn't able to get that, what will he be able to get? And that seemed to be kind of the case. And after that triangle, I think Ortega spent a lot of energy trying to finish with those submissions, and Volkanovski started raining big ground and pound at the end of that third round. I believe it was the end of the third. And man, the fight was almost stopped at the end of that third. I mean, that was a rough ending to the round, and Volkanovski really I don't know, that was just so much toughness and resiliency from the champ. You got to give him the respect. I mean, like I said, I thought for sure Ortega had finished the fight right there, but Volkanovski thought otherwise, and man, how impressive was that? And on the feet, man, Volkanovski was doing great, throwing lots of feints, pretty much picking apart Ortega. Ortega had his moments on the feet, but it wasn't all one-way traffic. It was a nice back-and-forth fight, but for the most part on the feet, it was kind of one-way traffic, I guess. Old Volkanovski was definitely controlling the fight with his feints, doing a lot more damage. Definitely, Ortega was definitely a lot more busted up at the end of this one. But also, that's also a lot from ground and pound, I think. Volkanovski did a lot of good ground and pound in this one. But like I said, man, Ortega jumping on those submissions, creating big moments, almost finishing the fight multiple times, and never gave up on himself the whole way through, man. I mean, he was getting beat up bad, and he never gave up. I mean, last 10 seconds of the fight, he's throwing big shots. Like, the dude never gave up on himself, and, you got to give him credit for that. You got to give him credit for that. And, even though he didn't have the skill set of the champion in that fight, he definitely had the heart of the champion in that one. And, man, you got to respect both guys. In my opinion, that's fight of the year thus far. Of course, there might be a better fight in the rest of this year, but so far, I think that's got to be fight of the year. That was a tremendous fight. And, so let me know what you think about that one. Hard to even say anything else. You don't want to knock either guy because they both put on such a hell of a performance, But yeah, Volkanovski really showing that he can mix it up and contend with the best of them in any facet of the game, So I can't wait to see the trilogy with him and Max Holloway. I think those are definitely the two best featherweights on the planet. So we'll see how the trilogy goes if they make that happen, and we'll see what's next for Brian Ortega. Maybe if Zabit comes back or something, get a fight with somebody like that, or maybe Giga Chikadze. so we'll see. But yeah, ultimately, great fight. Let me know what you guys thought about that fight. And just to briefly touch on the co-main event, I don't want to spend too much time on this one because it's kind of just how everyone saw it going. Valentina Shevchenko defends her flyweight title for the 6th time against Lauren Murphy. And man, this was complete one-way traffic. Obviously, Lauren Murphy was a huge underdog going into this one, and for good reason. I mean, she basically was outmanned in every aspect of the game. Valentina Shevchenko just so highly skilled. Anywhere the fight goes, she had the advantage. Strength, power, speed, on the feet, on the ground, in the clinch. Anywhere the fight went, it was her fight to lose, and she showed that. There were times where there were little bits of lulls in the action because Lauren Murphy was not necessarily willing to take the big risk of getting hurt to hurt Valentina, and Valentina was also, mitigating risk as well. Lauren Murphy was getting punished for every move she was making. Lauren Murphy, take a jab, get punched. Anything she did, she would get punished for it. So I think that kind of slowed her down a little bit, like a deer in headlights, made her, manage the risk a little bit more because I think it was just tough to deal with, And when Valentina felt the finish coming on in the 4th round, she really jumped to try to finish that fight. I mean, the whole fight, she's very patient, very patient. And the minute she hurt Lauren Murphy in the 4th round, I mean, she was on her trying to get the fight done. And, after hurting her bad on the feet for a little bit, she ended up finishing the fight with big ground and pound at the end of the 4th round. And, huge finish for Valentina. Went a little bit longer than I think most people would have expected. But like I said, that was just due to risk management from both sides. Valentina, definitely pound for pound, one of the best females on the roster. Pound for pound, one of the best female fighters on the planet. So let me know what you guys thought about that fight. I mean, my opinion just kind of went just like how most people would have thought. And then Nick Diaz in his return. It's been 5-6 years since Nick Diaz has fought. In his return against Robbie Lawler, man, while that fight was going on, it was fun to watch. Nick Diaz jumps out with a slow, jumping spinning kick, and obviously it doesn't land, and Robbie nearly finishes the fight 30 seconds in. You're thinking, oh no, come on, Nick, don't get finished here. But he didn't. He shook the cobwebs off, got warmed up, and once he started going, man, I was surprised. I mean, Nick was getting into the flow of things. He wasn't slow. He wasn't fast. He was a bit slow. He wasn't powerful. But the boxing was there. The combos were there. He was throwing tons of volume, like typical Diaz style. And, I was really surprised how many shots he was able to land on Robbie and how many combos he was able to put out there. I mean, like I said, I was very impressed. It was very fun to watch. And, despite Robbie probably winning most of the rounds before the finish, it was still so fun to watch while it lasted. And ultimately, Robbie landing the big shot to drop Nick, and Nick just didn't really want to get up. It seemed like maybe he had had enough at that point. I don't want to say he gave up on himself or quit, but he just probably had enough of the fight. He thought, I got what I wanted. I don't need to be here. I'm tired. I'm busted up, and that's that, So you got to give both guys credit. It was a hell of a fight while it lasted. And, should Nick I'll make a separate video about Nick here. Should Nick retire? It's up to him, of course. If he does want another fight, it has to be appropriate matchmaking. Chael Sonnen mentioned a fight with Damian Maia. I think that would be a perfect fight, but Damian Maia has retired. But somebody like that, an older guy with not necessarily the scariest striking, but something that could be a fun fight for Nick. That's what I think they should do next if Nick wants to fight again. But, we'll see what happens. It was a fun fight while it lasted. I couldn't believe how Nick was keeping up with the boxing and whatnot. So, very fun to watch. And, great stuff. And before that was Curtis Blaydes versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Not too much to talk about in this one. It wasn't a crazy eventful fight. Curtis Blaydes just pretty much outpointing Rozenstruik from beginning to end. Rozenstruik did land a big knee at one point while Curtis was shooting in for a takedown, but it wasn't enough to finish the fight. Curtis was able to secure the takedown and get control on the ground. Most of the ground time was control time, not necessarily huge ground and pound for Curtis, but Curtis still showed a classic performance of his. Good stand-up until the fight got to the ground, and then he controlled the fight there. Very good, well-rounded performance from Curtis, and he remains at the top of the heavyweight division, So good stuff from Curtis, and, good try from Jairzinho Rozenstruik as well. And to kick off the pay-per-view card was Jessica Andrade knocking out Cynthia Calvillo in the first round. There was just a few seconds left, but man, those punches were big punches coming from Andrade. And man, if you're not an elite world champion, Andrade is going to knock you out. I mean, she's like the perfect gatekeeper. I hate to use that word, but she's the perfect gatekeeper for the women's. She fights in so many different weight divisions. She's the best gatekeeper for all of them because, man, she might lose to, Valentina and Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili and guys like that, but man, ladies like that, I should say. But man, if she fights anyone lesser than her in the rankings, they can't stand her punching power at all, So very impressive stuff from Jessica Andrade, and great way to kick off the pay-per-view card, really. And then just to briefly touch on some of the prelims, I'm not going to touch on the early prelims, but just to briefly touch on some of the prelims, Merab Dvalishvili defeats Marlon Moraes with a second-round TKO with like 150 unanswered ground and pound strikes. I mean, this was hard to watch. I would have loved for this fight to have been stopped sooner instead of literally waiting for Marlon Moraes to give up on the ground. Like, that was rough to watch, but you got to give credit to Marlon. Almost finished the fight. I believe it was in the first round that he almost finished it. Just couldn't get Merab out of there. I thought for sure it was done, but Marlon kind of blew his load going for the finish there, and Merab was able to weather the storm, come back and change the tides and get the finish himself. So that was a crazy fight. I really hope Marlon doesn't get cut after losing 4 straight, because he did show good moments in that one, but this was just a tough matchup for him from the beginning. I was surprised that he even had that big moment, But great fight from Merab there. Let me know who you guys think should be next for each of them. And then before that was Dan Hooker making his return against Nasrat Haqparast. And Haqparast was going for big overhands, big shots to counter Hooker. And when Hooker realized that, he just ducked under the big shots and went for the takedowns. And he added that wrinkle in his game very nicely. He mixed it up very well in there. And, like I said, he showed a new wrinkle in his game there. I mean, he really looked very well-rounded. And if he can approach more fights with a style like that, I mean, that could be very dangerous for a lot of his opponents, even if he's not enforcing the wrestling big time. Just to even be able to fake for a takedown and actually concern your opponent is a big thing. It can open up the punches and kicks a lot more. So I love to see that from Dan Hooker. It was a unanimous decision, and he controlled the fight the whole way through. So great stuff from Dan Hooker, and he showed, like, yeah, I may have lost to a couple of guys here, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, but I'm still definitely a top 10 guy. That's what I got from Dan Hooker's performance. And before that was Chris Daukaus versus Shamil Abdurakhimov. And man, these are both 2 heavyweights around the top 10 in the rankings. And man, Chris Daukaus almost finished the fight in the first round. The round ended up coming to a close, and then Daukaus ended up getting the big KO to kick off the second round. Man, huge right hand, put Shamil straight asleep, I believe. And yeah, that was a crazy knockout, crazy fight. Chris Daukaus, not exactly built like a Greek god. He's not completely shredded, but the guy is very fast for heavyweight, and his hand speed is insane. When the guy lets his hands fly, those combos come flying with speed, So very fun to watch, and I believe he's undefeated in the UFC, so I'd love to see him contend against a top heavyweight. Maybe a guy like Rozenstruik coming off the loss. Who knows? And then to kick off the prelims was Taila Santos defeating Roxanne Modafferi via unanimous decision with, very well-rounded performance. Not too much to touch on there. Modafferi also had her moments. It wasn't complete one-way traffic. She also did a good job at, having her moments as well. But Taila Santos just the better fighter on the night. And then I guess I'll briefly touch on some of the early prelims. Jalen Turner defeats Uros Medic with a rear naked choke in the first round. After busting him up on the feet a little bit first, though, I think kind of busted him up a little bit and then jumped on the rear naked choke. So Uros Medic was a prospect a lot of guys were thinking would be a big problem, and he still definitely can be. He'll just have to, build back after this loss. He trains with Rafael Cordero, so definitely keep an eye out for both of those guys moving forward for sure. And then Nick Maximov, teammate of Nick and Nate Diaz, gets the win over Cody Brundage. Matthew Semmelsberger with the huge KO 15 seconds in. pretty much first punch of the fight. That was crazy, and I feel like this isn't the first time he's done that. I feel like he's done that again another time. So obviously that guy carries huge power. And then to kick off the card, Jonathan Pierce defeated Omar Morales with a rear naked choke. But those are just the early prelims. Let me know what you thought about the main fights. Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler, what did you think about that fight? And what do you think should be next for those guys? What about Valentina Shevchenko? What's next for her? And what did you think about Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega? Leave a comment. Let me know. I think that was fight of the year. Let me know what you think should be next for those guys. If you like this video, leave a like. Subscribe for more videos like this one. We got more coming every week, so subscribe for more. And thank you very much for watching.